Giddy up, guys. Thanks so much for tuning into Wager Wise Network. I'm Cowboy. We're back with another First and Goal. Today, we're heading to Iowa City, Iowa, where the Iowa Hawkeyes are hosting the Nebraska Cornhuskers November 29th, 4:30 p.m. NBC. Currently, Iowa is laying 6. The over-under is at 39.5. Which direction do you spin it? Which direction do you take it? Let's take a look at Iowa Hawkeyes so far this season. 15th in the nation defensively, 19.5 points per game. Only allow 324.1 yards per game. That's good enough for 24th in the nation. Standard Iowa defense, very difficult to run on. 121st in the nation as far as opponent rushing yards per game. 27th in the nation for only 121 yards per game. Teams don't even try to run. Only 6th in the nation. They only allow 29.7 rushing attempts per game. I flip that over to the side with the passing game. 41st in the nation, 203 yards per game, and a interception rate of 8th in the game, we're 4.63. So when you do throw on this team, they're creating turnovers at a substantial rate. In fact, the 11th best team in turnovers in the nation, 1.9 points per game. And, as opposed to other teams where I say that's not a sustainable rate, it's different with Iowa. It is a sustainable rate because it's been sustainable for 10, 15, 20 years. Once again, Iowa, the most disciplined team in the nation. Number 1 in fewest penalties per game. That's kind of there's some data behind that doesn't miscue the number a little bit. They don't run a lot of plays. I mean, that's fact. I mean, they do not run a lot of plays. 27.7 yards per game, 2.8 penalties. They just, like I said, they don't run a ton of plays, and that's how they work. 53rd in the nation offensively, 28.3 points per game. They are a rushing attack. No shocker there. 210 yards on the ground. Not a very strong passing team. In fact, there's only 3 teams that are worse at passing the football to them. 121.3 yards per game. But lo and behold, this has kind of changed a little bit. This is you've kind of found a fountain of youth, a different dynamic with a new quarterback under center for these guys. They started the season with Cade McNamara at quarterback, and things were looking fine. And, he's been there for a little bit. He was their quarterback. And then all of a sudden they made a change, man. The offense is kind of stagnant. They're 4-3, 2-2, and he leaves. And now you've got Sullivan taking over at quarterback. And he's a little bit better of runner, that's for sure. 6'4", 220 yards. Not necessarily a passer. So they went back when McNamara could throw the football just a little bit. They went back old school. But Sullivan's had a couple decent passing performances. 157 yards. That was in a loss to UCLA where he was forced to throw. But the offense puts up a hell of a lot more points. In fact, this offense has put up a lot more points than I've seen it put up in a long time. Multiple 40-point games in a season for the first time in I don't know how long. In fact, 4 40-point games this season. Washington, Illinois State, Northwestern, and Wisconsin. I mean, that's Washington, Northwestern, Wisconsin. That's 3 pretty decent defenses you drop 40 on. Coming off a win, 29-13 at Maryland. Defense did their damn thing. They just shut them down. They just slow them down. They just don't allow that to happen. They are winners of 3 out of 4. They did lose at UCLA. UCLA's been playing good football. UCLA's played a tough schedule. I don't think there's any shame in that. And you had ample opportunity to win that game. It really was a true coin toss game. It was just a bad second quarter by Iowa's defense in tow, and their offense. Very few turnovers they had. 2 turnovers that game for Sullivan through the air. That really kind of changed the whole dynamic of the whole game. Team typically does take good care of the football, though. Flip that over to Nebraska Cornhuskers. God, do we have to talk about Nebraska? I don't like this Nebraska football team, and I know a lot of people think Matt Rule's going to do a good job. Team started out 3-0, and then had a big home game against Illinois where they ended up losing, and then they won the next 2. Still 5-1, right there in the top 25. Then you started playing some real football teams. Indiana, you get smoked 56-7. Ohio State, you play them tight, all things considering, man. At Ohio State, 21-17, you played. That was about one of the better games they played. You had it. You did come back from behind. It wasn't, you were up 17-14. Ohio State scored late. You were down early, and then you took the lead in the fourth quarter, and you kind of had Ohio State shook, say rattled. Since then they lost to UCLA 27-20, lost to USC 28-20. You play Wisconsin, you blow the doors off them. So what do you make of this Nebraska team? Are they good? Are they bad? Are they something in between? I don't think they're good. And I know that I just went down their schedule, and their losses are tight losses. They played a relatively weak schedule, in my opinion. UTEP, Colorado, and I know Colorado's good now, but they had that revenge on Colorado, and Colorado was still kind of figuring out themselves. And Colorado actually played really good in the second half. They just played one bad half of football. In fact, they played way better in the second half. They won 10-0. Northern Illinois, and then you play a good team in Illinois and you lose. You play a bad team in Purdue, you win. You play a bad team in Rutgers and you win. Play a good team in Indiana, you lose. You play a good team at Ohio State. That is their best loss. 21-17 is a good loss, and especially considering you were up 17-14 in the fourth quarter, that is a good loss. So, and then you lose to UCLA at home, 27-20. You lose to USC, who's not good. Neither one of those teams. I mean, they're both going to make a bowl game. Or actually, I don't think UCLA is going to make a bowl game. USC, the winner, whoever wins, is going to make a bowl game. That's right. They're both 5 wins, so whoever wins is going to make a bowl game. And then you blow out Wisconsin. Wisconsin had a heartbreaking loss at Oregon. That was a complete letdown game. Now you go to Iowa. Nebraska's stats. 30th in the nation in defense, 22.2 points per game. Very difficult team to run on. In fact, they're even a better rushing defense than Iowa. 16th in the nation in run defense, 108.3 yards per game. You get thrown them a little bit. 223 through the air, 69th in the nation. Team isn't very disciplined though. They're sloppy, man. They're a sloppy team. They don't take great care of the football. They don't create a ton of turnovers. They're flat in the turnover margins, and they don't get extra opportunities, nor do they give extra opportunities. But they're sloppy in penalties. 94th in the nation in penalty yards per game. And while they do have a great sack percentage, you're going against a team that does allow to be sacked a little bit too in Iowa. So there is concern that you might get sacked there, but that's once again a skewed number because they don't throw the ball anyway. So your sack rate should be lower. If you get sacked 3 times, it's over anyways. So how do you break this game down? How do you look at it? I take a look at what that number is. That number is at 6. That's a big number in a 39.5. It's a telling number in 39.5. Iowa is a very difficult place to play football game at. No one's going to argue that. You have to take a look too at history, what history tells you in the series. Who's won before, who's lost before, who finishes strong, who doesn't finish strong. These two teams played last year. Nebraska was favored by 2.5 at home. Iowa wins by 3. Now you come home, line opens up at 5. It's a pure line. It's a line telling you exactly where it should be. Over-under was at 26. It does jump up to 39, so there is a big gap on the over-under. Even though 39 sounds like a lot of points, that is a big gap. Prior to that, when Iowa was at home, they're a 10.5 point favorite. They lost. These teams are alternating wins and losses. Iowa now has covered. Iowa's now covered 1, 2, 3 out of the last 4 at home, though. Albeit this is one of the bigger spreads that Iowa's had. I will say this, though. When Iowa has laid more than 5 points in this series, they have covered every time. And going back to 2014. So the odds makers have a pretty good feel on how this game breaks down. When you see a big gap, that gap covers. That team covers that gap. That team wins by margin. When you see a small, tight gap, it's tight to the number. 2.5 point line last year, 3 point game. 1.5 point, 4 point line in 2019, 3 point game. 3 point line, you have to go all the way back to 2016 where a 3 point line didn't matter. But once again, Iowa as a home favorite absolutely dominates in this series. Iowa as a home favorite in this series is now covered. They didn't cover in 2022. But other than that, they've covered every other time since 2014. So it is a telltale sign that when they grade this game, they grade it accurately. And I do like to pay attention to how Vegas, or I shouldn't say Vegas because that's not where odds are always made, but it's a big part of it. You do tell when odds makers make these lines with the intent of where they go. The numbers will tell you a story how it is. I do have concerns with Raiola playing quarterback. We can talk about this guy a little bit. I know I already said earlier, I think he's going to look back in his life and be embarrassed as all hell and think he's cringe for the way he does things. He thinks he's a lot better than he is, and he gets himself, I think he causes more damage for the team than he does help. 2,400 yards to the air, 12 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He thinks he's already at Mahomes. He thinks he's already at that point where he can take the game over. He doesn't let the game come to him. You can't do that in Iowa. You go to Iowa and you start trying to take the game over against that Iowa defense, especially the last home game of the season, especially a team that's had a really good season at home. It's not going to end up well for you. And that's kind of the whole telltale sign with this is I see this line and I go, well, that's a tight line. Iowa at home this season has been very, very clean. The only loss was to Iowa State, 20-19. That was a loss, an inexplicable loss too. I mean, this team should have won that game, dominated that game. They were up 13. They were up 13-0, and Iowa State storms back and wins that. In fact, and they even had Iowa State. They were up 19-17, and Iowa State goes 42 yards in 28 seconds to win the game. That's not very, and I mean, you don't just get 42 yards on Iowa in 28 seconds. So it was a game of, I don't want to say it was a game of variance, but it definitely was a situation where this team was 90.4% chance to win the game. And lo and behold, a late drive, a late kick finds a way to win it. The team was up 13-0. Usually if Iowa's got a 13-point lead, that's good enough to maintain. I see this game breaking down very similar to that game. I don't think Nebraska's going to be able to pull out late. I see Iowa getting a lead early. I see Iowa doing what they do, using the clock, eating it, playing the field position game, slowing it down. And you've got a young, inexperienced quarterback that's going to go out there and try to force too many things to happen. And Raiola gets a couple turnovers, and lo and behold, the game rolls. So for me, guys, I'm laying 6 points, which is an awful lot on a 39 line. I'm not afraid to, though. I think you've got to have some cojones to lay 6 points in a game like this. So give me the Iowa Hawkeyes -6 over the Nebraska Cornhuskers based on the strength of the Iowa defense at home, the strength of Iowa at home in general, based on the strength of the line being graded at 6 instead of, gapping correctly, and based on the fact that we've got a young upstart freshman quarterback who thinks he's so good going into a hostile environment where he's going to try to force things to make them happen, and it's going to turn out bad for him. So guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I'll catch you guys at the window.